Martin Popoff here from the Contrarians. Welcome back to another edition of Reliving Old Reviews as a Useless Tool of Confusion. We are looking at the Stooges Funhouse today. This is a period review from 1970 from Melody Maker by R.H. Let's take a look and see what they thought of the Stooges. Again, the whole point of the show is to look at these albums that, don't really have any good comparatives and seeing what a reviewer can possibly say about these records. So the Stooges Funhouse, next to Grand Funk Railroad. This is the worst album I've heard this year. Interesting. So we get immediately a comparison to Grand Funk Railroad. So Grand Funk was fairly heavy at this time. They're both from, they kind of both Ann Arbor. Anyways, the Ann Arbor, Detroit area. Let's move on here. I'll start again. Next to Grand Funk Railroad, this is the worst album I've heard this year. In truth, it's a muddy load of sluggish, unimaginative rubbish, heavily disguised by electricity and called American rock. Interesting. So we've got called American rock here. I'm kind of getting it right. It's muddy. It's a load of sluggish, unimaginative rubbish. I mean, Funhouse is definitely a dirtier, less ideas than Stooges. Stooges, the first album from 1969. It is very distortedly recording. John Cale did a much better job on the debut. But this is a pretty rough album, and he's kind of getting it right, but not really, cottoning in really on how heavy this is for the time. Kind of a theme of a lot of the first episodes of our show here. Let's see. I've heard a few takes about the Stooges. Singer Iggy Pop, that's daft enough, apparently spends evenings throwing himself into the midst of audiences and getting beaten up by the aforesaid tribes of poor people. Well, maybe that's about the best thing you could do to the guy. So obviously Iggy was already doing his act in 1970, where he'd kind of invented this whole stage diving thing, I suppose, throwing himself into the audience. And the reviewer makes a joke about Iggy's name, calling him daft already. Let's see. Ron Ashton on lead guitar sounds as though he badly injured both hands. There's really no excuse for turning out such bloody, rotten stuff. I'm trying desperately to think of one good thing about it. Maybe the bass of Dave Alexander offers a little fluent power. But again, in truth, this album only goes to show up the gullible efforts of record companies and the people who raise such groups to an absurd status. I'm willing to believe that the stage act is a gas to watch, but on record, yuck. EEEECCHH exclamation mark. So the idea here, this reviewer is not cottoning on to the excitement and the heaviness and the punk rockness of this, basically just finding it anti-music, which is kind of the notorious charm of it, and why it has become a classic over the years. It's pretty much similar to the story of Raw Power, and somewhat the story of the debut. The debut is almost like Van Halen, right? The most professional album the Stooges ever did. Van Halen, maybe the most professional album Van Halen ever did, debuts. But yeah, so there's basically just finding nothing of value in here. I love that Ron Ashton quote on guitar sounds as he's badly injured both hands. One of my fond memories is meeting Ron and Scott backstage at Massey Hall and Iggy, on a Stooges reunion tour thing. And then not long after, Ron was gone and then Scott was gone. But there you go. An episode of Reliving Old Reviews is a useless tool of confusion. Did this reviewer get it right? Let us know in the comments.